Welcome back to Wordfully Yours. This is The Plot Hole. My name is Jeff. I write as J.S. Johnston. I am the author of The Man in the Disappearing Suit. Murder and time travel make for a hell of a day at work. The Man in the Disappearing Suit should be available now. You can go buy it and read it and do whatever you want with books because it's out.
I'm Harlan Deschamps, and I mostly write YA, sci-fi fantasy, especially. Don't have anything published yet, but hopefully soon. And I do a lot of work with the Highlights Foundation, so you might hear me talk about that sometimes. Or if you're in the kid lit arena, you might see me there. So
cool. This week's article comes from The Guardian. Romance Writers of America files for bankruptcy amid bitter racism battle. So, first off, I had no idea this was a thing until I didn't know writers had clubs like this.
There's a horror one, and of course, there's SCBWI for kid lit, so they all have their own things. Sci-fi has one too.
Yeah. Sci-fi has one, and I was even told that I should be a member of it so I can put it on my query letters, and I don't understand why. Maybe they're like the Freemasons or something.
I that's one of the reasons that I was in SCBWI for a while too. But that and like access to the things, but then I just stopped getting as much out of it, and I don't know if I've really noticed much of a difference when querying anyway, mentioning that kind of stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Anyway, group says membership crisis means it cannot pay conference contracts as top writer condemns RWA's retreat from commitment to equality. For decades, the Romance Writers of America served as a companion for the mostly female authors of one of the country's most popular and denigrated genres of fiction. But even as sales of romance novels have boomed in recent years, RWA has struggled, reporting that its membership has declined 80% amid bitter internal battles over racism within publishing and within the group itself.
Yeah. It's pretty big.
And I had no idea it existed.
And the funny thing is, so they say that it reduced the membership by 80%, but then they say also in 2018, an estimated 80% of their 10,000 members were white, which is interesting because that means a lot of the white members left because they were upset about this as well.
Yeah.
Or just that they saw it going down the tubes.
Yeah, and they jumped ship.
Yeah. But man, and then later they say that they owe like $3 million. Yeah, $3 million to hotels for a writers' conference.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, I just can't even imagine like what was going on that that they had, like, you had to see it happening right before you have the writers' conference and go that far. But I don't know, maybe it all happened like so fast that they were in the middle of planning it or something.
It says Black authors and other authors of color spoke out about the racism they had faced within a group, which did not give one of its many internal Rita Awards to a Black author until 2019. A Christian inspirational romance about a Jewish woman falling in love with a Nazi officer at a concentration camp was nominated for a Rita in 2015. But some white authors were unhappy with the few focus and pushback, according to authors of color, of bullying and unprofessional behavior over their public discussions of racism. Yeah, that does not sound like a comfortable place to be.
No, it sounds toxic in general. Like, regardless of who's bullying who, I'm sure there was things happening on both sides. And it's hard, when you're, if they're talking about, because a lot of it talks about cyberbullying and things like that. So the question is like, I don't, from the context of this article, I'm not sure where the bullying was happening. Like, was it on their like their boards, their community boards or whatever, or
Mhm.
was it taken even to Twitter and like there was harassment happening off the community boards? But like, in general online, it's hard to read tone and intention, right? And then
Yeah.
there's also people who are very straightforward and then get very upset, like if they feel that they're being wronged in some way. So
Yeah.
I can
And
see how a lot of that could get out of hand pretty quick.
it's easy to have arguments online because you're missing that tone and facial expressions. I try to use tons of emojis to sort of get around that.
Right.
Happy faces or sad faces or mad faces or whatever.
I mean, I feel like as autistics, we're often misunderstood anyway. So we're
Yeah.
always like trying to like make sure like you realize this is sarcasm, right?
Yeah. As I always said, we really need a sarcasm font.
Yes.
So what I try to do is I try to put it in HTML tags, like brackets, sarcasm, slanty thing,
Right.
sarcasm.
Exactly.
So,
And
so,
then
so, so
end
people understand
sarcasm.
that, because you don't get any of that through text. So
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
really easy to start an argument that just goes on forever and ever, and until you're like, oh my god, why did I say anything? Why didn't I just keep scrolling?
Half the time I like type out this huge response and then I'm like, nope, people are gonna totally misunderstand this or misread it, and then I just delete it all and then I'll write it again and then like I
Yeah,
just go back and forth.
because so many times it's like, do you remember the scene in The Martian where they had established communication with what's his name up on Mars, and it's basically just some text, and the one guy is trying to figure out what he meant by that. It was when they gave him their plan to get him off the planet, and the response was, "Are you kidding me?" And he was trying to figure out if he meant, "Are you kidding me?" or "Are you kidding me?"
Right.
Or is it, "Are you kidding me?"
Because it can be interpreted any way.
Right. So many arguments just happen that way because when people read this stuff, they somehow default, "Are you kidding me?" You know, but that's how it happens.
Right.
So the article ends, as RWA has struggled, other romance organizations that explicitly prioritize diversity have grown. The Stimulant Conference, first held in 2023, focuses on creating a welcoming environment for romance readers and writers of color. Founder Melissa, I don't know how to pronounce her name, said. An estimated 1,900 people are expected to attend this August conference this year. So that's a good ending. So, I mean, I keep telling everybody, it is the 21st century. We should all have flying cars we should all be past this racist bullshit by now.
I know. Whatever happened? I thought we were gonna like all hold hands in a big circle around the world, and
Yeah, what happened to
that was gonna be
King's
the end of
dream
it.
of our kids playing together and
Right.
everybody's equal, and why can't we have that? I mean, what's stopping us from having that? We keep reading articles about people being racist to other people and just being mean and stupid and
Yeah. So this ties directly into our book banning, right? Like with the
yeah. It's basically the
with
same
the
thing, only on a different
accepting
subject.
right.
Instead of banning books because they're diverse, they're the writers themselves having a problem with diversity.
Right. And I mean, I feel like everyone's really, not this could be a can of worms too, just to say this, but I feel like a lot of people are very sensitive these days, and not like going down the like snowflake route, but just, because it's hard to read intention, a lot of people like assume that the intention is negative versus positive, right? Like you
Yeah.
go into an interaction already thinking like this is bad. And even like someone might just be like offering some kind of like, they might be trying to help, or I mean, I know with the autistic community, like we're just like try to say things to help, and we don't
Yeah.
know when to not say things, right? So
Yeah, we try to be helpful, but it's so
sometimes
stressful
it's
because you don't know if you're just going to piss somebody off.
Right, exactly. And I mean, like, there are things that, there's a point in the book process where things can be changed, but there's also a point where things can't really be changed, or, and even after you publish a book these days, you can put out other versions of it. So you
Yeah.
could technically, adjust something, but there's also then the nightmare of why did you change it? And,
Yeah.
and you have to deal with that, right?
There's a lot of talk about that because I forget what classic author they were releasing updated versions of his books, like without the racism and stuff, and there's people getting upset about that.
Roald Dahl, was it Roald Dahl
It,
that you're
it might have
thinking
been.
of?
That sounds familiar.
I think that it was some of his books.
Because Chris was one of the people who were against an updated version of it.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I have like, two stances of possible things, and that's you shouldn't get rid of the old version. Like, we should still have that to learn from, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to say, like, this is wrong, like, let's identify that it's wrong. Like, I don't like that they keep taking like TV shows off, or like, like, this had a problematic episode one time, so we're just taking that
Yeah.
down, and now you can't watch the episode. But like, instead, how about, like, I think Disney did this, I'm pretty sure, where they had a disclaimer at the beginning of one of the shows that we were watching with my son, and it said, like, there are like racist stereotypes depicted in this, and we do not agree with this.
Mm-hmm.
But we also feel that we shouldn't change the original content. And I thought that was really awesome that they left that.
That's a very good.
And then it was just a talking point, right? Like, it was just like, okay, to our son, like, this is not appropriate. The way that these people are being represented is not appropriate. It's not accurate. It's not, like, and, it was the rug, and like, not think about it.
I accidentally stopped recording for a second, and I started. It turns out the spacebar stops recording, so I am recording again. So I'll put the keyboard up here. But yeah, but I guess I'll just end up cutting all that out. But I get your point. There's like the Looney Tunes cartoons. There's a ton of racist cartoons.
Oh yeah.
I mean, really racist cartoons. But instead of just not showing the Looney Tunes to kids, they just don't show them the really gnarly ones.
Right.
They basically just take that out because, one, you don't really want to stop and explain this to a 5-year-old. You just want to give them something to watch.
Right.
But at the same time, like books like say Huckleberry Finn. I mean, most schools don't carry this book just because they normalize the N-word, Jim, right? But it's not out of print. It's just before you give it to somebody, they understand what it is, where it came from,
Right.
the time period that it was written in. They understand that you don't go around calling people this when they read it.
Exactly.
So, in my opinion, that's where it should be. You shouldn't just if a book is so old that it no longer reflects our values, don't just not let people read it. Just make sure they understand what it is and the context it came in. At least if you're giving it to a kid. A grown-up would know the difference.
And going back to, like, the RWA and everything, like, there's a part in here that's talking about, like, even when they were trying to address the concerns over racism when it came up in 2021, they gave an award to a novel where the protagonist took part in the 1890 massacre of more than 300 Lakota men, women, and children at the Battle of Wounded Knee. So, like, I mean, that's another thing is, like, I feel like there's kind of a place for that as well, like, where you're like, you don't want to sweep that under the rug, right? Like, you don't want to sweep under the rug that these people were massacred.
Yeah,
you know,
you don't want to just forget that happened. It's
right.
there, but
However, like depending on if the novel was like glorifying it, like if I'm assuming if the protagonist, you
yeah,
know, like if the protagonist took part in it and there's not like an actual arc where there's like, you know, like, oh my God, what did I do? And, you know, whatever, which I'm
yeah,
assuming there's not, I don't know, you know, then it almost glorifies it. And then you're on top of that, you're rewarding it, you know, what is that? Like, so
right.
I'm not sure if that's, you know, a good thing or bad. Like it sounds like it's bad because, you know, because they're listing it as a controversy. So I'm assuming it glorified it.
Right.
But
But that's time. Um,
all
if
right.
y'all made it through this long, thank you very much. You are the best audience in all of YouTube, and I love you. Um, all the links to all the things will be down in the video description. Thanks for watching. We will see you guys next week. Bye bye. Do the hard thing. Bye. And